urinated into the cup, and then drank her p. She wanted to f him the moment she laid eyes on him. This is a cult. My mom is going to be so angry with me. On June 22nd, 2026, The Cut posted an article by Hannah Murray titled, "Did a Cult Land Me in a Psychiatric Ward?" It contained excerpts from her new book, The Make-Believe of Magic and Madness, which was set to be released the following day. Now, for my own sanity, I'm going to be reading from my laptop here, and if you would like to read the article that I already posted, it is on my Substack, which will be linked below. But otherwise, let's get right on into it. Murray briefly detailed the tail end of her stay in a psych ward and the ritual initiation process that she went through upon release into an unnamed wellness and spirituality cult. Her vivid description of the experience evoked a feeling of magic for the reader, which, in reading the book, you will find is the core theme. She interpreted the sun on her skin as a message from her leader, Steve, believing him to be the Egyptian god of the sun, Ra. The light was his love. Quote, "Everything felt sublime and blissful. The world a golden paradise," she said. "The reality was that I was still out of my mind." Unquote. In an interview with Waterstones, when asked about her writing process, Murray said that it started in a coffee shop. Quote, "I really didn't know where to begin. I think with the memoir, it's a big question of, do I start on the day I was born? Like, where did the sequence of events really start to happen?" Unquote. This was interesting to me because the first chapter of the memoir threw us directly into her life in 2016 as she was filming Detroit, a historical crime drama set in 1967. Murray was very intimate with the reader. The book felt like we were sitting down together having a chat over coffee. It wasn't just a look into her life from beginning to end. It was given to us with the assumption that we knew her to a degree already, like we were friends. And maybe because having been in the public eye since she was 17 through the hit TV show Skins, Murray felt like the world already knew her, so she dove right into the nitty-gritty. She was feeling lost, desperate for a way out of her life of sex, drugs, and booze. She found herself often in the self-help aisle of bookstores, declaring her newfound interest in spirituality her full-time job. She started meditating twice a day, becoming more enthralled with the lifestyle, abstaining more from drugs, and repairing herself little by little. Then, her personal trainer Aubrey suggested she see an energy healer named Grace. Grace greeted Murray with warmth and a hug at the door of her apartment in Boston, pulling her in. At the beginning of their encounter, Grace asked Murray if she wanted her to explain a little bit more about her work, or if Murray would prefer to tell Grace why she was there in the first place. Quote, "I said, okay, why don't you tell me what you do first?" She paused. "I'm just wondering if I actually want to do that first." Unquote. This was the first instance that gave Murray a feeling of uneasiness. The first thing she decided to gloss over and move past. Grace gave her the perceived idea that she was in control of the conversation, then guided her to where she actually wanted the interaction to go. Murray was made to go first, detailing vulnerable information. This became a recurring theme. Murray opened up instantly about her mental health struggles to Grace, a perfect stranger. She told her about her work-life balance, history with cutting, depression, habits, drug use, history of infidelity, and relationship patterns. Then she told her something she hadn't opened up to many people about at all. Murray's mother had suffered 5 miscarriages before she was born. This led her to feel a sort of survivor's guilt, believing that she was born while those 5 souls had perished. She obsessed over this fact, feeling she had to make up for it in how she lived her life, making sure it wasn't something she took for granted. Quote, "My secret hope was that Grace might be able to heal this deep pain I had always felt, as long as I could remember, my guilt of being alive." Unquote. Grace explained she could do a Reiki session or something more intense, an energy healing that she felt might be more helpful for Murray. She played into Murray's desperate search for something more fulfilling, making her feel special. Quote, I felt seen. I felt understood. I felt I had found exactly what I had been searching for. I already knew that whatever Grace was selling, I was buying. Unquote. They completed a healing session that would be followed up with teaching sessions in London so Murray could learn to heal herself. During the previous summer, before the filming of Detroit, Murray attended a party at her friend Rena's house. She met a man she referred to as Sam that night, and they hit it off, spending the night chatting in the kitchen and drinking out of jam jars. Again, another instant, intimate connection, which I felt mirrored her writing style and the overall tone of the book. She asked him that night, "Can we be friends?" To which Sam reciprocated the familiarity, saying, "We already are." At that point, Sam told Murray he had a boyfriend, but he heavily implied he was bisexual. Another night, while at a party and under the effects of MDMA, they ran into each other again. Murray was warned by a friend that Sam had just gotten out of a relationship. It had been a rough breakup and that he was in a dark place. The moment she saw him, he came up to her and through slurred words professed, "I love you, Hannah Murray." She tried to kiss him later that evening, to which he turned his head in rejection. She tried to push him out of her mind, moving into an apartment with her friend Rena, and time passed. More parties, more smoking, more drugs. Not long after, Sam moved into an apartment on the same street, and things between them started to move slowly, flirting here and there. In March, Rena invited Sam to come with the girls and some other friends to her annual birthday party trip to a house in the woods. They dressed in animal onesies, spending the weekend playing board games and doing drugs a la Bacchanalia. This was when they had their first kiss. Sam pushed Murray up against the wall in the kitchen while she was wearing her pink unicorn onesie, but because Rena was one of Sam's best friends, they decided to keep it a secret, spending the weekend making out whenever no one was looking like horny teens. Murray's birthday party came around in June. As the months passed, she and Sam had become much closer. More smoking that night, more drinking. Have I mentioned Hannah Murray loved drugs? Finally, they had sex, after months of flirting and snogging. She then proceeded to get off on the wrong foot with her pillow talk, making an offhanded comment about sex and death, two things that in her mind had a crystal clear connection. She believed everything that we did was out of fear of mortality, at least in her experience. This made Sam uncomfortable, and he joked, quote, "I am never having sex with you again." Unquote. She didn't see him for a month after that. Every time she texted him, he brushed her off, but Murray became obsessed with him, a pattern of behavior she admitted she had. Considering the fact that after she got out of the psych ward, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, this pattern may have been attributed to her condition. People with bipolar disorder often experience obsession or limerence towards romantic partners. Quote, "I started to turn Sam in my mind into something more than he was, an utterly perfect match, the only person I could imagine being with." Unquote. She found out through Rena that he had started seeing someone else, a man named Luke. Again, she tried to push her feelings down, even outright ignoring him in public, which could be difficult when you live on the same street. Filming for Detroit began in July of 2016 in Boston, and with that, Murray was off to the East Coast. The change of scenery helped her put Sam out of her mind and live her life, instead of waiting around for a text from him. Although a couple messages did trickle in here and there, the obsession fizzled. After filming wrapped, however, Sam reached out, inviting Murray to a Kanye concert in New York City. Suddenly, she was on a train to see him for the first time in 6 weeks. She got cozy in his apartment and meditated as she waited for his arrival from work. Then they set off to Madison Square Garden, through the lively city streets. On their walk, Sam pried into how much money she had made from the film. Slightly taken aback, Murray answered, but in that moment she felt jaded by the question, saying she found him a bit less attractive. At the venue, as they waited for the concert to begin while munching on hot dogs and drinking beer, she spotted Kim Kardashian, Kanye's then wife, and her sisters in the VIP section below. She said, quote, "The fame of the Kardashians was on a different level, in a different stratosphere. I considered us to be in a different category. They were not real people. I was." Unquote. Being a celebrity had made Murray feel special, and she had tied her identity to acting for most of her life, but playing a character meant stepping into the role of someone else entirely, compared to someone like a Kardashian, who was famous for being herself. Stepping out of this persona she had built would have meant letting go of her ego, and she tried her damnedest to accomplish that. The concert was a religious experience for her. She almost floated home. It reinforced the idea that magic was real for her, something she had felt at a young age, and a feeling that had been returning since her session with Grace. She went back to London and threw herself into her work, doing some filming for Game of Thrones. Keeping up with her energy healing, she took a train to Paddington, where Grace arranged for her to meet with a woman named Siobhan. Grace said in her email, quote, "You're actually handed down 3,000-year-old sacred rituals to be used personally at any time for 10 times greater empowerment and 10 times more light in alignment with your life purpose. Since you really connected with the energy healing, I'm sure this class would be amazing for you, especially while on a movie set, for keeping the negative energy ego at bay." Unquote. Whatever that meant. They met in a cafe to discuss the nature of the classes, and Siobhan spoke of them casually, explaining how Murray would learn rituals that would help protect her space and stop her from taking on other people's energy. It would cost £700. They planned to meet again the next day for class, and as Murray left, she realized she had lost her coat on the Heathrow Express. When she went to the Lost and Found, she was surprised to find that someone had actually returned it. She took it as a sign from the universe, something she had started to see much more frequently in her life. Divine circumstances came together, perfectly stitched for her. Magic. Murray gave Rena a half-truth about the classes she planned to take, not coming out completely about what she was getting herself into. She recounted, quote, "I was scared that if I talked about it, I would do so inadequately, and in doing so, it would take off some of the shine." Unquote. She didn't want anyone to burst her rosy bubble and tell her that what she was doing was ridiculous. If it stayed close to her chest, it stayed protected and real. The following day, she took the tube to the Henry Hotel in Hyde Park, a stately, stark white building with shabby green carpet and dark paneling in the lobby, dimly lit with yellow electric lamps. Siobhan was talking to a man who was the only other student in the class. They made their way to the basement where they began their studies in a floor-to-ceiling blue room, thick with an air of incense that blanketed the space. Seated by a table adorned with flowers and crystals, the two pupils listened as Siobhan explained key concepts. She wrote on a pad of paper on an easel beside her and drew diagrams. She explained that everything she was teaching had been handed down from person to person in an unbroken lineage over thousands of years and was taught as part of a larger organization. How this organization operated was kept vague, as was who was in charge. This was all by design. While Murray didn't specifically name the cult, online speculation has led people to believe that it was Modern Mystery School, a New Age pyramid scheme. Because the class was so small, Murray assumed the organization wasn't very big. She felt like she had discovered something special, and in that, she was special. This gave her a new identity to latch onto. If celebritism hadn't brought her the satisfaction she craved or stroked her ego hard enough, maybe this would. Siobhan told them that they were about to be handed down ancient rituals. They were taught how to create a magic circle that they could step into by feeling the 4 elements and waving their hands around. In performing the ritual, and feeling imaginary pillars in her hands as she stepped into the circle, Murray felt completely transformed. Even through her enlightenment, she felt there were a few concepts that didn't match her worldview. Siobhan explained that everyone has a soulmate, and as part of their divine purpose, they must find theirs. Once in the afterlife, in heaven, their souls would merge into one creator God. While she rejected such a traditional concept of monogamy, Murray thought that hers must be Sam. Drawing further on fantasy, she explained that fairies, gnomes, elves, unicorns, and dragons were real. Again, Murray hesitated. While she felt Siobhan proclaiming her third eye was strong and her psychic ability powerful, Murray almost drew the line at mythical creatures. But she felt so open. It was hard to dismiss the entirety of the teachings just because she couldn't wrap her head around one concept. She felt the magic in her heart, bones, and soul. So perhaps they were real. At least if this feeling was, right? The sensations that traveled over her body, through her chakras and mind's eye. Siobhan assigned them homework. Take a bath and sleep inside a magic circle, and sent them on their way. She again felt electric on her way home. She was in a different category of people than the ones who sat near her on the train. They were normal, and she was enlightened. In an interview with Today Show Australia, when asked if being an actor made her more susceptible to the cult, Murray said, quote, "I was so used to living in fantasy. I was used to slightly giving away my power to someone else." Unquote. There's a reason Scientology's continental headquarters are located in Hollywood. The next day, she took the tube back over to the hotel for their next course of guided meditation. Siobhan said they were going to meet their guardian angels, their spirit guides, and their higher selves. They opened their chakras once more and entered their sanctuaries. The visions Murray saw were vivid. Images of a narwhal swimming in a river, her higher self, crying stars and diamonds with the neck of a swan, an old wizard, a leopard with 3 tails. Siobhan explained that the organization was part of 7 schools across the world, and the only one open to the public. These schools taught the ancient magic of the universe, and were becoming more open to the public due to the urgent need for these teachings to become more widespread for humanity. Murray believed that they were saving the world through astral travel, sacred geometry, Wiccan training, Egyptian magic, dragon magic, mermaid magic, vampire magic, unicorn magic. The list goes on. She craved to take them all. Replace her addiction to drugs with the secrets and missions of the organization's teachings. Transform lives. Help others like Grace had helped her. She told Siobhan, quote, "I always wanted to believe that magic is real, and now I know that it is. This is exactly what I had always been searching for, but never dared imagine I would find." Unquote. She fell into a depression in the coming weeks, spending time moping around her apartment, and thoughts of cutting herself appeared in her mind for the first time in years. Siobhan calmed her worries, telling her that the transformation could be difficult to adjust to. The weekend after, Siobhan performed a ritual cord cutting for Murray. To break the connection between her and Sam, she ran into him at a party. She confronted him. High on coke and angry with how they left things, she tore into him. He didn't disagree that things weren't right between them. She woke up the next morning feeling like a weight had been lifted off of her chest, but she was still enthralled with him. They arranged to meet at the movies, where she gave him an ultimatum. They had to work through what their relationship meant, whether they were lovers or just friends. Sam promised to think about what she said, really think about what he wanted to do, and they hugged goodbye. Weeks later, Rena and Murray planned a Christmas party, to which Sam blew off by texting Rena he wasn't coming. Murray flew home for the holidays with her family for the first time in 10 years. The new year came and went, and Murray gave up smoking before returning to London. Over the following weeks, she spent her time walking through the park, practicing yoga, and embracing a growing sense of self-love. When Siobhan invited her to a psychic night at the hospital, where members of the organization offer healings and readings to raise money for charity, Murray eagerly accepted. Back in the Blue Room, she felt what she described as a glorious sense of belonging. Siobhan told her about a healing course beginning in March, and Murray believed it was the natural next step in her spiritual journey. That evening, she spoke enthusiastically about how her daily rituals and commitment to letting the light in had transformed her life. She learned that before taking the healing course, she needed to complete 3 prerequisite courses: Journeys of the Spirit, Astral Travel, and 12 Races of the Earth. She would also need to arrive earlier than the other students to finish them. In the days leading up to the course, Murray entered a manic state. She woke up around 3 a.m. each morning, overflowing with energy. Quote, "I felt a powerful energy coursing through my body, and I wrote in my journal, 'Am I going mad?' Unquote." She rented an Airbnb for the week without telling anyone where she was going, believing the isolation would allow her to glory in the light. At the time, she viewed the secrecy as a form of self-protection. In reality, it left her increasingly isolated and vulnerable to the organization's influence. Her thinking reflected the classic us versus them mindset often encouraged in high-control groups. Journeys of the Spirit proved to be the hardest class of the day. They took 4 journeys through the 4 elements in a guided meditation. When asked to receive messages in her meditations, Murray found it to be difficult. She felt like her brain was just throwing nonsense at her, but she pushed through. Even if Mother Gaia blew a raspberry at her, surely it meant something. She just had to find a way to interpret it, had to feel like magic was real, that the signs were real. She had, after all, put real money and real time into the organization, slowly becoming a victim to sunk cost fallacy. As the class came to a close, she started to think the meditations were becoming more vivid. Quote, "I felt like a wild, wise woman. I felt like a witch. I felt magic." Unquote, she later recalled. The following morning's astral travel class taught students that they could journey to other dimensions or distant locations. After staring at a black dot for what felt like hours, Murray closed her eyes and followed the guided visualization, though she felt only mentally exhausted, her brain tied in knots. She doubted she had traveled anywhere, but Siobhan assured her the class had all done so energetically and could continue practicing at home. The final prerequisite, 12 Races of Earth, was much more full of students, all crammed into the blue room. 2 teachers, Neve and Christine, spoke of the harmony the races must find through Shambhala. These races included the Atlantean race, which Murray found particularly ridiculous, to think you could swim down to Atlantis and see them living there. One more thing that her rational brain fought. The teachers explained the marriage traditions of elves and how the fairy and mermaid races lived as she took notes. Christine said that the vampire race fed on the dregs of society, prostitutes, drug addicts, and criminals. Rage boiled in Murray's mind, and she left for her Airbnb with a sour taste in her mouth after the class. An inner turmoil rose within her, feeling unsure that night if the magic world was wholly good. She fought to believe. On the morning the healing course began, Murray completed her rituals and meditated before leaving her Airbnb. During meditation, she unexpectedly found herself thinking of Sam. Although she believed she had changed while he remained the same, she still felt connected to him. When she walked into the lobby of the hotel, she was surprised to find such a swath of people, some that had traveled halfway across the world. One by one, Siobhan checked the financial standing of each attendee, making sure their payments were up to date. The initial payment for the course was £700, with an additional payment of £1,300. The prerequisites had cost £444, totaling £2,444, but she couldn't put a price on magic. She wondered if everyone felt the teachings fully and honestly. The class about races shook her beliefs particularly hard, but she was ready to become an energy healer. People went around the room introducing themselves and their reasons for being there, including a man who felt his life purpose was to heal Mother Gaia. She thought to herself she was in a room of crazy people. The students were told to leave the blue room while it was transformed into a temple. All at once, they were told to knock on the door 3 times and chant in unison, "We seek further knowledge." Then the students were sprayed with holy water as they re-entered the room one at a time. Sage wafted through the air, and the lights were dimmed. They were led through their rituals once more. She felt power in being able to say them aloud in a large group setting, as usually she whispered them in her bedroom of the shared apartment so Rena didn't hear. Neve demonstrated the 16 lotus petals, a form of healing. Her hands traveled over a person's body, never touching, over various energy points. Then the students paired up to try for themselves. Murray was nervous, but to her delight, she felt and sensed the elements as she moved over her partner's body. She moved her hands over their chakras, feeling more light and free, healing with love from her heart. She once again professed how much she believed in the organization again. The repetition back and forth between believing and not believing started to feel monotonous. And buckle up, because it doesn't really end. The rest of the day went as you might expect. More woo-woo meditation, energy healing, and revelations that magic is real. She was so invigorated at one point she did a cartwheel to class. She was higher than she ever was on cocaine. With the promise that she would receive guidance through voices in her head, she was given a wand that would be used for her energy healing journey. She unwrapped it from a red cloth and ribbon, described it as one of the most erotic experiences of her life, called it her best friend, and decided it's time to tell some of her family members about her transformation. This is where shit gets crazy. She took the wand to dinner, after its adamant pestering, and listened to it all night as it guided her. She heard the wand in her head, telling her what to eat, what to drink, how to make her family members more receptive to the information she was divulging. She believed it had unlocked parts of her brain that she wasn't able to access, like in the movie Lucy. Then she quizzed it in the car ride home about her future. On the penultimate day of the course, just before initiation, Murray met Steve, the organization's leader, a middle-aged man with pepper gray hair and dripping with confidence. She wanted to fuck him the moment she laid eyes on him. As the day progressed, her urge grew stronger and stronger. At one point, she feared he was reading her mind. Not just hers, but everyone else in the room, all at once. Quote, "When I looked around at all the female teachers in the room, all these women surrounding one charismatic man, and the way Steve was making me feel the overwhelming sexual presence of him, I thought, shit, this is a sex cult. My mom is going to be so angry with me." Unquote. Initiation day came with reverence. Despite spending much of the previous night chanting into a mirror, baptizing herself in the Airbnb bathroom, hearing Steve's voice in her mind, and believing he was her soulmate, Murray claimed she felt no fatigue. Returning to the basement room, she experienced an overwhelming sense of invincibility. She believed Steve's love surrounded her and mentally prepared her for what she imagined would become their spiritual union and the salvation of humanity. After performing a healing ritual on another student, the class was instructed to raise the room's vibration. As music played, Murray's memories became fragmented. She later recalled flashes of vivid images separated by gaps. She believed the room was ascending to another level of reality before suddenly finding herself seated across from Steve. He told her that magic was real, but it worked differently than she had imagined, and that something was wrong with her spiritual DNA. A whirlwind of visions collided. She imagined demons waiting in her apartment, and her body felt heavy like she had been drugged. Her next clear memory placed her in the hallway outside of the initiation room, waiting in line for her turn. Unsure she could continue, she ran into a bathroom and locked herself inside of a stall. Convinced that she carried the fate of the world, she lowered her head into the toilet bowl, believing she was preparing to give birth to a new world. Teachers and students repeatedly checked on her, but she insisted she would only come out for Steve. When he arrived, she believed that they communicated telepathically, because he could not speak openly in front of others. During the exchange, she threatened to remove her clothes. Soon afterward, she found herself standing by the sinks as more teachers entered and began performing what appeared to be an exorcism, chanting from an old leather-bound book. "Begone, evil spirit and Hannah," they proclaimed. Murray thought to herself it was all a show, one hilarious performance that she couldn't help but laugh at. The chaos continued. After chasing Steve through the hotel, arguing with him in the hallway, and allowing teachers to put her shoes back on, a group of men entered the building. Murray interpreted their arrival as the final test of her initiation, believing that she had to kill them before she could be reunited with Steve. When one man spoke into a walkie-talkie, she concluded she had passed. She was restrained, placed onto a stretcher, which she perceived as a chariot, and transported away, convinced she was being taken to her palace to reunite with her king. At the hospital, Murray waited for Steve to arrive. When a nurse entered, she briefly believed he was Steve in a disguise and attempted to kiss him. After he rejected her, she concluded he was someone else. He brought her tea and toast before leaving her alone. She drank the tea, urinated into the cup, and then drank her piss, believing she had created a powerful spiritual potion. She declared she would survive solely on liquids, air, and light, sustained entirely by her own energy. When staff informed her she had been detained under the Mental Health Act for 28 days, the news failed to register. Upon arriving at the psychiatric ward, she became convinced she had been sent on a secret mission to heal everyone's energy and illnesses. The fate of the world depended on it. Days passed by, and Murray hadn't come out of her psychotic break yet. She ran through the corridors of the ward in search of Steve. Every thought was of him and all-consuming. When nurses tried to give her sedatives, she thrashed and screamed until Steve's voice told her it was okay. She swallowed obediently, justified the act as erotic and submissive for her all-knowing and powerful Father God husband leader. After slightly recovering from her ego death and starting to remember her name, she gained access to her phone. She found a message from the day of the episode from Siobhan and replied back asking for Steve's contact information, to which she obliged. She asked him if what happened to her was normal. He assured her that if the reaction she had to the program was something that happened all the time, they wouldn't be able to handle the chaos. Steve explained that the episode was an attack from demons. Due to her special potential, she was targeted and possessed. She started to message back and forth with Sam again. She wasn't convinced he was real and wondered if he was either Steve in disguise or sent to keep a close eye on her. She sent large paragraphs of messages to Steve, back to back to back. He replied with short quips here and there, and sometimes not at all. This didn't dissuade her. She sent emoji after emoji, praying he could solve her encrypted messages. He didn't, but he was still her king. After 2 weeks, she was allowed to step outside and feel the sun on her skin. Her demeanor was docile. She was playing the part of a patient well on the surface. Underneath, she still felt energy coursing through her body and craved to bask in the new world she created with Steve. The first tree she set her eyes upon was the first she had ever seen in her life, as now she was reborn from her ego death, even if she knew her old name. When Murray had been on the ward for 3 weeks, she was granted leave to go back home to her own apartment. But it didn't end here. Her healing journey was not so cut and dry, or linear, which is the story for a lot of people who undergo mental health treatment. Quote, "I was not well when I left the hospital. I did not enter ill and leave well. I entered extremely psychotic and left somewhat less so." Unquote. Murray continued her rituals, fearing demons would find her now that the hospital couldn't keep her safe. She huddled on the terrace of her palace, overlooking the new perfect world, and brandished her wand. She wrote down, in words and emojis, every sign she saw in her notes app. The universe was still sending connections to her through advertisements and music. The early days of her homecoming were spent going to cafes for lunch with friends and sending more messages to Steve. As part of her care plan, her team advised her to see a therapist. Upon her intake, although careful not to trip up and divulge something that would land her back in the hospital, she ran through her history of trauma and mental illness, much like she had done in her first meeting with Grace. After listening intently for a while, he said he believed she had textbook bipolar disorder. Quote, "I had always wanted to know what was wrong with me. Now, here was someone calm and qualified in the field of psychiatric medicine, giving me 2 words that might provide a clearly defined answer." Unquote. She still craved to complete her initiation. Siobhan booked a room at a hotel, though not the one where she had spent most of her time with the organization. Neve and Christine had prepared it with sage. The 3 women waited for Murray's arrival, their long blonde hair mirroring hers. She believed they looked like one big family. No one acknowledged what had happened the last time they'd seen each other. It didn't seem to matter. As the women performed an energy healing on Murray, sunlight streamed through the windows. Feeling the warmth on her face, she thought of Steve. To her, he was Ra, the Egyptian sun god. His love seemed to pour through her, into her spirit and out through her soul. Then it was her turn. After completing her own energy healing, she knelt on a cloth before Siobhan. Words were spoken over her as she became enveloped in the magical world once again. They hugged, heart to heart, and then it was over. They said their goodbyes. Murray walked out of the ward and back into the arms of the organization. If her mind was a compass, the needle drifted closer to sanity in the weeks that followed. When she spoke to friends about the things she had done during her psychotic break, they now struck her as almost silly. But she was still enthralled with Steve. And in a conversation with her friend Jody, whom she'd met during the course, she voiced her doubts about the organization. Jody explained that her boyfriend believed she was in a cult after researching it online. Murray finally allowed herself to voice her own doubts. As she untangled the thoughts that had been circling in her head, the truth spilled out. For the first time, she admitted that she was in love with Steve. They bonded over their shared fear that they had become deeply involved in something they barely understood. Steve's messages trickled in, few and far between. At Rena's insistence, Murray started going on dates. She believed Steve wouldn't mind or see it as infidelity. Their bond, she told herself, was stronger than the physical. After several healing sessions with Siobhan, which she had been led to believe were free, an invoice for £1,000 arrived. It was the first time she hesitated before giving money to the organization. She paid for it anyways. The texts she did receive from Steve began to sound more like advertisements. He urged her to step onto the ritual master path, a commitment that would cost thousands of more pounds. She slipped back into depression, replacing alcohol and drugs with food. Ignoring her therapist's advice, Murray enrolled in more classes with the organization, desperate to recapture the magic she once felt. This is when she finally discovered Steve was married. She had fought hard to dismiss the possibility, even though he had mentioned having a son and the organization preached finding a soulmate. Now she had to take the class more than ever. She had to see this woman for herself. Returning to the hotel where she suffered her break was traumatic. The memories rushed back. In the blue room, she saw Steve's wife, her curls draped down her back, the familiar pendant resting against her neck that Steve also wore. Lisa. It was all too real, too much to bear. Her smile lit a fire in Murray's mind. Had she ever occupied Steve's thoughts more than another member? Did he feel the same way? Had he not spoken to her telepathically? Each class session dragged on, stripped of the magic Murray had once been desperate to reclaim. The women slowly poured oils into bowls of salt, staring into them as they infused them with loving energy. It was like watching paint dry. They practiced smudging, wafting sage with feathers. Finally, they learned the ancient beauty secrets of Cleopatra, which turned out to be lessons on nutrition and avoiding low vibrational foods. They were also encouraged to dress more femininely, and makeup was considered essential. Murray disliked being told to conform. Despite the disappointment of Lisa's class, she still believed becoming a ritual master might be her destiny. Maybe it would bring Steve back to her. His voice rarely came to her now. In a conversation with another friend in the organization, Murray asked whether becoming a ritual master would bring her clarity. The woman replied that it had shown her how little she truly knew, and how much more she still had to learn. Murray feared that with every class she took, knowledge would remain just beyond her reach. The classes seemed deliberately designed that way, keeping students chasing the next answer and paying for the next course. Slowly, the organization's grip on Murray loosened. It didn't happen all at once. Even after reading horrifying accounts online from former members whose stories mirrored hers, she wasn't fully disillusioned. She even took a class in elf healing or some bullshit like that, but eventually she stopped her daily rituals. She stopped messaging Steve. Then one day she woke up and realized she wasn't trapped anymore. She moved to Los Angeles to live on her own, apart from Rena, despite loving her dearly. She needed a change of pace, a change of scenery. After all, what better place for an actor than California, right? It wasn't a fairy tale ending. She didn't end up with Steve, or Sam for that matter, either. On the 1-year anniversary of her release from the hospital, she boarded a plane toward her new life. In the epilogue, Murray admits she doesn't believe she is fully healed. She's created distance from both spirituality and the organization, but claiming to be healed while living with bipolar disorder, a condition she will manage for the rest of her life, doesn't feel honest. Now she finds magic in the simple splendors of everyday life. The taste of coffee, making dinner, living in reality, and the miracle that she survived it all. Magic is real. I am not fully convinced that the organization is the reason for Hannah Murray's psychotic break. Was it like throwing gasoline on a bonfire? Sure, definitely. But to say that the members and the leader pushed her to a breaking point, which is the narrative that she spins in the book, would be dishonest. I would agree with her, however, that these groups, cults like the one that she joined, prey on individuals like her. She was the perfect candidate. A young vessel filled with ambition to be famous and severe mental illness. One that they could mold and control. But Steve wasn't really in her head, and he wasn't sending her secret messages telepathically in her mind. He built a pyramid model empire to squeeze money out of desperate individuals like Murray. As he said in his text to her, it wouldn't work if it gave people breakdowns all the time. How can a basket case continue to pour money into the organization? I wish Miss Murray the best in her journey with bipolar disorder. I've seen its effects firsthand myself with family members, and I know it's a challenge. I'm glad she has received help, and she seems to be doing a lot better now. As always, I will leave some links below to my Instagram and my Substack if you're interested in that. Bye.